The other witnesses I spoke to about this event had very similar stories, and the fact that these people were willing to give up months of work tells me this was real, and we could be facing a very serious threat.
Bryce Johnson stood still. Right in front of him, bones, a pile, fresh, flesh had been torn off. This wasn't a simple camping trip or a casual search. This Bigfoot hunt had turned dark. A man had disappeared. Equipment was messed with. Something in Alaska's forest was not just hiding, it was hunting. This journey started with evidence found in California. Strange clues pointed to a rare kind of wolf, a type that only existed in one part of Alaska, Prince of Wales Island. Bryce and the team followed the trail. But once they landed on that island, everything changed. The island felt different. From the moment Bryce and Maria stepped off the plane, the island didn't feel right. The mood was off. The air felt heavier. Locals didn't meet their eyes. And those who did speak? Their voices were low, nervous. People didn't talk about Bigfoot anymore. They talked about missing people, screams in the night, hunters vanishing. Something had scared them so much that families packed up and left the island completely. Town meetings were held, people fled, and those who stayed were quiet. Out of almost 20 people Maria and Bryce tried to talk to, only one man agreed, but even he wouldn't show his face on camera. The logger story. This man was a logger, tough, used to the wild, but he admitted something had shaken him.
2 weeks ago, we were all working out here. There was at least 20 guys, and we just started noticing things were moved.
His crew had been working deep in the woods, far from any town. No quick way out, no backup. If anything went wrong, they were alone. And something did go wrong. Tools started disappearing. At first, they blamed each other, but then they found the missing gear sitting neatly at the forest's edge. No claw marks, no tracks, no explanation, just perfectly placed tools, as if someone or something was watching and playing with them. When Maria asked if it could have been a bear, the logger was firm. No. Soon after, the sound started. Screams in the night. At first, the screams were far off. Quiet, from deep in the woods, but they didn't sound like bears or wolves. The logger said it sounded like a woman in pain. Each night, the screams came closer, louder, more disturbing. The crew had been staying by a pile of logs. That's where Maria and Bryce met the man. He told them the sounds were creeping toward their camp, closer every night. People in town weren't being paranoid. They were being careful. They were scared. The logger said it straight. People vanished out there, and whatever was taking them, it wasn't human. That's not our land. The logger warned them. These mountains didn't belong to humans. Whatever lived up there had been there long before people. Even old-timers knew better than to go deep into the mountains.
A bear could have taken this stuff?
No, if it would have been a bear, there'd been some kind of signs or tracks or something. And
Bryce asked if he'd ever gone up there. The logger answered quickly, never. It wasn't for them. As he walked away, he gave one last warning. If you're not from here, you don't belong out there, ignoring the warning. But Bryce and Maria couldn't walk away. To them, this wasn't just another forest. This was the biggest hotspot for Bigfoot sightings they'd ever seen, and the danger only made them more curious. Locals didn't just mention shadows or noises, they were terrified. The team focused on a remote mountain area. It had been the center of multiple reports. As they flew toward the zone, Russell, another team member, explained some of the legends from Native American stories. These stories weren't about friendly forest spirits. They described something much worse than Bigfoot, an aggressive creature, a supernatural being, something mean. The mission begins. The team landed near a lake. From there, the search began. Using drones and scent trackers, they scouted the area. But the smells they picked up weren't normal. Rotting flesh, wet dog, and something else, something no one could describe. The trackers pointed to 2 possible locations. So the team split up. Maria went low. Russell climbed the mountain, and then the chaos started. Night in the forest. Russell's group got caught in a storm. While they looked for shelter, they heard loud rustling. The awful smell came back. Something was moving. Russell turned on his flashlight. Everyone was tense. They pushed forward, and what they found was horrifying. Pieces of skin were hanging in the trees, torn, fresh, eaten. Before they could even process it, the rustling returned. Something massive was nearby. They chased the sound. Along the way, they saw broken branches, freshly snapped. Russell knew. They were on the trail of something. But just like that, it vanished. The rustling stopped. The woods fell silent. Down the mountain. At the same time, Mireya's team was facing their own nightmare. She smelled it too, that same foul odor. Then she saw it. A pile of bones, skulls, scattered remains. At first she thought it might be Bigfoot's skeleton, but this wasn't a body. It was a kill site. Something had been hunted and eaten. Mireya radioed Russell. Her voice shook. "I just found a pile of bones." But that wasn't the worst part. Her equipment started glitching. The laser-guided tech went wild. Readings jumped all over the place. Then suddenly, it locked onto something. A signal. Something was nearby. Something big. Being watched. Everyone on the team felt it. They were being watched. The scanner readings confirmed it, but they couldn't see anything. The foul smell crept closer. Then, gone. Just like that, it vanished. And the scanner readings returned to normal. They weren't just being followed. They were being stalked, toyed with. Another scream rang through the forest. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded human. Bryce whispered, "What was that?" It was coming from different directions. And then, rustling above them. Then silence. They froze. That's not a wolf. Russell's crew stayed alert. This wasn't about Bigfoot anymore. They were in real danger. The place had already been abandoned by loggers. Now they knew why. Mireya wanted to head to the lake, the same place the scream seemed to come from. They walked for 2 miles. The air got heavier with each step. Meanwhile, Russell returned to the spot where they had seen the animal's skin. But now it was gone. Not on the ground, not in the trees, just gone.
We've been outmaneuvered. Something is thinking 10 steps ahead of us. I think there's more here than what I'm seeing tonight.
And the spot where it had been? 20 feet up. Too high for a bear to reach without snapping branches. Whatever took it was fast, smart, and careful. Russell realized something chilling. It had waited for them to leave, and then came back. It had outsmarted them. The creature's intelligence. Russell stood there, stunned. The skin was 20 feet off the ground. No claw marks, no broken branches, no struggle. He realized the creature was smart. It had waited until they chased the noise, then doubled back to retrieve what it wanted. It moved in the dark, avoiding their lights. It was quiet, fast, one step ahead, always. Russell admitted it. They were outmatched, and they weren't just being watched anymore. They were being studied. Zach feels the presence. Zach, one of the crew members, spoke up. He felt it too, that heavy feeling, that something was watching them. Not just an animal's curiosity, something that understood them, something that didn't want them there. Everyone was on edge. The next morning brought some hope. The storm had softened the ground. They might be able to find footprints. The team spread out, looking for signs, tracking in the mud. They found tracks, but not what they wanted. Bear tracks, many of them. Zach, who knew his wildlife, explained that the bears were probably just active after the rain, searching for food, moving around the wet forest. He reassured the team. During the day, they were probably safe. But Mireya didn't feel safe. Not at all. A different kind of fear. This trip felt different, more dangerous. For the first time ever, they had armed guards with them. These weren't park rangers or forest experts. These were real guards. Guns, safety vests, watchful eyes.
Having these armed guards does change the feel of the expedition. And even though they will be watching from behind the scenes, there is a constant, present, walking reminder that you're in danger.
Mireya had done many expeditions. She had gone into bear country before, but this wasn't like that. This wasn't just wild. It was hostile. She couldn't ignore the tension. The guards weren't just there for animals. They were there for something else. The guards stand by. The guards stayed out of the way. But their presence was heavy. They didn't speak much. They just watched, guns ready. It made the team feel like they were in a war zone. Whatever they were chasing, whatever was out there, it was serious. And they were no longer sure they could handle it. A predator in the dark. The team realized this creature was more than just an animal. It was hunting them, but not in a rush. It was slow, careful, studying them, planning. This wasn't just a predator. This was something with a strategy. The tension in the forest grew. Mireya remembered other Bigfoot stories. Some were peaceful. A shadow in the woods, a figure watching from a distance. But this one? This one felt violent, territorial, angry. Like they weren't just visitors, they were trespassers. Portlock, a town that vanished. Bryce and Mireya turned their attention to a ghost town in Alaska. Portlock, a place that had been abandoned, not once but 4 times. Not because of floods, not because of storms, but because of something darker. Whispers of attacks, bodies found in the woods, a creature that came in the night. They wanted to know what happened there. A cursed village. Portlock was once full of life, a fishing village, families, homes, but it didn't last. Over the years, people tried to live there. Every time something went wrong, people vanished, bodies turned up, the survivors ran. It wasn't sickness, it was fear. The kind of fear that grips your chest and doesn't let go. The kind that makes people abandon their homes overnight and never come back. The Sugpiaq settle in. In 1867, a group of Sugpiaq natives moved into Portlock. It seemed perfect. Food was everywhere. Fish, clams, moose. But the peace didn't last. Within weeks, the attacks began. Not raids from other tribes. These attacks were different, savage, violent. The villagers weren't just being scared. They were being hunted. Cannibal giants. Locals had a name for them. Cannibal giants. Huge, strong, smart. And they weren't after animals. They came for people. Night after night, the giants tore through the village. The people tried to fight, but it was no use. Eventually, they fled. The land was left to rot. The creatures had won, a logger's gruesome death. Years passed. In 1931, a logger named Andrew Kamluck went missing. He had gone into the woods alone, ignoring warnings. His friends went looking for him. What they found shocked them. Andrew's body lay crushed by his own sled. A sled so heavy no person could have lifted it. His dogs were shredded. His sled was tossed across the woods like a toy. Something huge had done this. Something with impossible strength. Larson's encounter. Another man, Tom Larson, had his own encounter. He had gone down to the beach to chop wood. There, he saw it. A massive, hairy figure, standing upright. It wasn't human, but it wasn't just an animal either. Its eyes locked with his. Larson ran home, grabbed his rifle, but when he returned, he froze. He couldn't pull the trigger. They stared at each other, and then the creature turned and disappeared into the forest. It didn't attack, it didn't run, it simply left. But that moment stayed with Larson forever. It confirmed everything. A predator awakes. Locals called it the Nantinaq, a spirit, a beast, a hunter. After Kamluck's death, the creature seemed to change. It became more active, more violent. People began to vanish again. Not just 1 or 2, many. The town lived in fear. Some said it was revenge. Others thought it was something else. But no one denied it anymore. The Nantinaq was real, and it was getting closer. Disappearances begin again. The fear in Portlock grew. Gold miners started to go missing. At first, people thought it was normal. Miners sometimes left for long trips and lost contact. But it wasn't just the miners. Then hunters disappeared. Then villagers. And still, no one came back. The people realized this wasn't just random. It was a pattern. The creature was moving closer and closer to the heart of the town, closer to the people's homes. They were running out of time. Bodies are found. Then, the bodies started to surface. Some were floating in the bay. Others were found on trails and near rivers. All of them were marked. Deep claw wounds, bite marks, torn flesh. Some bodies were barely recognizable. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just hunting. It was devouring. And it wasn't afraid anymore. It was coming out in the open. It wanted them to know it was there. It wanted them to be afraid. Portlock is abandoned. The final straw was when the attacks grew so frequent that no one felt safe. The entire village packed up and left. Not just one family, not just the sick or the old. Everyone. They didn't sell their homes. They didn't move to nearby towns. They just left. Overnight. The village became silent. Buildings collapsed over time. Nature took over. Portlock was gone. A whole town wiped out. Not by war, not by disease, but by something no one could explain. The expedition returns. Back on the island, Bryce, Maria, and the team were deep in the forest. The stories of Portlock weren't just legends to them anymore. They were warnings. The same signs were happening again. Strange smells, screams in the night, disappearing animals, creeping dread. They had to know more. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous it got. Watching from the trees. Zach once again reported that feeling, being watched. This time, he was sure it wasn't his imagination. They stopped to scan the area again, but nothing showed up. Still, the scanners would spike, then go quiet, then spike again. Whatever was out there was playing games with them, staying just out of reach, letting them know it was there. It wasn't hiding anymore. It was waiting. Vanishing evidence. The team went back to the kill site. They needed more proof. Maybe bones, maybe hair. But again, the area had changed. The bones were gone. The smell was gone. Everything was cleaned up, like nothing had ever happened. But they had seen it. They had recorded it. Still, the forest had erased every trace, like it was warning them, go home.
If there's any DNA on this, this could be amazing. That hair was white.
The scream returns. Later that night, the screams started again. Only this time, they were louder, closer. The sound surrounded them. From the left, from the right, from behind. It wasn't just one creature. It was more than one. Voices. Some sounded human. Others didn't. They froze in place, trying to figure out where to run, trying not to panic. Approaching the lake, Maria insisted they keep going. The sound was coming from the lake. That's where the signal had come from earlier. They walked in silence, flashlights pointed forward. Over 2 miles through thick brush and heavy air. They reached the edge of the water. Silence. Then rustling behind them, they turned fast. Nothing. Then, across the lake, a flash of movement, a shape. Too big to be human, too fast to be a bear. Gone in seconds. They didn't chase it. Not this time. They were too tired, too shaken, too aware that whatever it was controlling the night. The final realization. Back at camp, Bryce and the team talked through everything. The sightings, the bones, the flesh in the trees, the screams, the vanished logger equipment, the Portlock stories, and the deep, constant feeling that they were never alone, that something had been walking with them the entire time, letting them feel brave, letting them think they were hunting. But really, they were the ones being tracked, being herded, being studied, like animals. This wasn't just a search for Bigfoot anymore. This was survival, and they were on someone else's land. Reviewing the danger. Morning came, but the fear didn't leave. The team gathered around their gear. Sleep had been light, almost none. Every branch snap outside their tents felt like a warning. They reviewed all the evidence. Bones scattered in a kill zone. Screams that sounded almost human. Tools stolen and replaced without a trace. Skin hanging 20 feet up in trees. Missing logger stories. Equipment malfunctioning at key moments. Scanners showing something was close, then nothing. And most of all, the constant feeling that something was just out of reach, always watching. Bryce and Maria realized what everyone else already knew. They weren't the hunters here. They were the bait. Armed, but still exposed. Even with armed guards, the team felt vulnerable. This wasn't about weapons anymore. You can't shoot what you can't see. The creature didn't attack them directly. It played with them, studied them. When it wanted to disappear, it did. When it wanted to scare them, it made sure they heard it. It never rushed. It was never afraid. It was in control from the moment they stepped onto the island. And it didn't want them there. Echoes of Portlock. The group talked about Portlock again. Not just the stories, the warnings. How entire families had left in one night. How no one stayed long. How some vanished without a sound. How bodies were found shredded. Those weren't stories from hundreds of years ago. Some were recent. Some people on the island today had lived through that fear, and they had tried to tell the team, but the team had come anyway. And now they understood. The final encounter. On their last night, the crew stayed close. Maria refused to go off alone. Russell kept his flashlight in his hand the entire time. Zach kept his head on a swivel. No one talked much. The forest was still, too still. Then, it started again. The smell. That same rotten scent. Wet fur, flesh, decay. It moved through the trees like smoke. One second it was there, the next it was gone. Then a scream, right at the edge of their camp. Not far, close, loud, painful. Human, but not. The team froze. No one moved, no one breathed. Then something moved behind them. They turned. Nothing, but they knew. It was close. It wanted them to know it was there. It was showing them who the forest belonged to, leaving the island. The next morning, the team made a decision. They had what they came for. They had footage, audio, scans, interviews, and they had something else, something harder to describe, proof that they had been somewhere they weren't supposed to be. Somewhere claimed. They packed up, loaded their gear, and got off the island. No one spoke on the flight out. They didn't need to. Everyone felt it. They weren't chased out. They were allowed to leave, but with a warning, don't come back. What they learned. After the trip, Bryce and his team reviewed everything again. They didn't have clear footage of the creature, but they had something stronger. Patterns, repetition, voices from different towns all telling the same story. Smart, strategic behavior. Animals don't do that. Predators don't toy with their prey. But this thing did. It wasn't just strong. It was aware. It watched them, learned from them, and let them go. That's what haunted them the most, the unseen power. There's a difference between being in danger and being warned. Bryce believed what they faced wasn't just physical. It was psychological. Whatever they saw, or almost saw, it knew fear. And it used it. It understood sound, light, shadows. It let them chase rustles while it doubled back. It led them to bones while it circled around. It erased evidence overnight. It waited. It watched. It wanted them to feel helpless. And it worked. The expedition to Alaska wasn't just about Bigfoot. It started that way. But it ended with something else. Something darker. A force that can't be explained by science or stories. A presence that makes grown men freeze in place. A scream that sounds too close to humans. A power that can clear villages and silence even the bravest voices. Bryce Johnson and his team went looking for answers. What they found were warnings. Some forests don't want to be explored. Some creatures don't want to be found. And sometimes the smartest thing you can do is leave.